Hi there, I'm Tim, and it's time to help you choose what's on your table this weekend. Every week we take 3 games from a certain category and we tell you what they're all about, how many players they're for, how long they take to play. We give you an overview of the game and the mechanics that are used in it, and we tell you what we like about that game, all to try to help you choose for yourself what might be on your table this weekend. Anyway, let's take a walk on over to the closet and let's see what this week's category is. Well, this week we're going to talk about railroad themed games. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is going to be a top 3 railroad games list because I honestly can't really come up with the top 3 railroad games. And the reason for that is that there are a lot of railroad games. Now, if you think about it, that makes sense. Railroad as a genre lends itself to board games because in real life railroads, there's so many things that have parallels to board game mechanics that it's a genre that makes for great board games. But we're going to talk about some of them this week, at least 3 that we've enjoyed, and hopefully you'll enjoy as well. Our first one is Ride the Rails. Now, Ride the Rails is a 3 to 5 player game of light to medium complexity. Now, the box says it takes 45 to 60 minutes. It actually takes us about 70 minutes to play this game. If you have a new player at the table, I would add probably about 5 minutes. Ride the Rails is a game where players are railroad tycoons looking to buy shares in different companies, then build rail tracks across the United States using those companies, and then help passengers get from one point to another using the railway tracks that have been built throughout the game. Now, the game is played over 6 rounds, and each round has 3 phases. In the first phase, each player will get the opportunity to obtain a share of a different company. Now, each company is represented by a different colored locomotive, so I could say get a share in the blue company or the red company, and there's 6 different companies that you can get. After that, each player gets a chance to lay a certain number of railway tracks of any company that they own a share in. So if I don't own shares in, say, red, then I can't lay red tracks down. But the way that works is that you basically take the color of your choice of a share that you own, and each track is represented by these little locomotives here, and you place them in the hexagonal spaces. Now, you can only place them connected to a different railway track of the same color. So you can only build off of what's already there. And if there's nothing there already, then there's different cities that you can start in, and there's rules around that. Now, once every player has had the chance to build railway track, each player is going to get the chance to move one passenger from one city to another using any combination of rail tracks on the board so long as it's connected. So we have this passenger here in Philadelphia. Because there's different color rail tracks connected, they could go all the way from Philadelphia through all of these cities, all the way to Los Angeles. And the player who does that is going to get 1 point for every city they move through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each city being represented by these darker hexagons here. So whoever moved that passenger will get 8 points, but other players will get points too. So basically, any player who has a share in any color or any rail company that passenger used to get to Los Angeles is going to get a point for every city that they use that railway company for. So for instance, in this case, blue was used from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cities. So everybody who has a share in blue will get $6 per share that they have. So if I have 1 share in blue, I'll get $6. If I have 3 shares in blue, I'll get $18. Where it gets interesting is when they go from one city to another, and that's included in their travel, that has multiple shares, like in this case, there's red and blue here, both red and blue shareholders will get points. Now, as I said, the game is 6 rounds long. At the end of the 6 rounds, whoever has the most points or the most money wins the game. Now, the mechanics in Ride the Rails are network and route building, pick up and deliver, and stock holding. Well, now, if I had to pick 3 things that I really like about Ride the Rails, the first one is this. It's the second game in a 3-game series. There's 2 other games with similar style boxes of similar size. This is the second one in the series. It's called the Iron Rails series, and it's a series of railroad games of different themes and variations that are all, somewhat easy to learn and play and easy to pack as well if you want to take them somewhere. Another thing that I really like about this game is that every player has the ability to affect different railroad companies that everybody has shares in. So what I mean by that is that if there's 3 players at the table, all 3 of us might have shares in the same company. And the moves that we're making it makes it a little bit more complex that you have to think about it, because you're not just affecting your own points or what you might get, but you're potentially affecting giving other people points as well. And so it forces your decisions to be just a little bit more complex, even though the game itself is rather simple to teach and learn. It makes for interesting decisions when you're actually trying to play the game. You're trying to weigh the benefits and the drawbacks of every move that you might make. The last thing I like about this game is the art. Ian O'Toole is the artist on this game. Now, you may know him from a lot of the Vital Lacerda games that have been on Kickstarter, and I've just yet to see a game that he does the art for that doesn't look fantastic. Now, I promised myself that I wouldn't include Ticket to Ride in this episode because it was just such a natural choice that a lot of people would already know about. Not saying I don't like the game, great game, but I am going to pick Ticket to Ride, the card game, because not a lot of people know about this one. It's a 2 to 4 player game, light complexity. The box says it takes about 30 minutes. We find on average it takes us 25 minutes to play this game, and it takes about 5 to 10 extra minutes if you have a new player at the table. Now, Ticket to Ride, the card game, is much like the regular Ticket to Ride game in that players have different destination tickets that they're trying to complete. So they're trying to get from point A to point B. So for instance, this is a Chicago to San Francisco ticket. Now, the way the players complete it is by having the certain color specified on the destination ticket sitting in a pile that's face down that's called rail cards on the tracks. So in other words, in order to complete Chicago to San Francisco, a player is going to have one white card, one yellow card, like that one, a purple card, and an orange card on the tracks in order for it to be considered completed. If they can do that, they're going to get 16 points. Now, a player's turn comprises of 2 actions. The first action is always going to be taking cards that are considered in your rail yards. These are face-up cards in front of you, and putting them on the tracks. Now, the way that works is for every unique color that you have in front of you, you take 1 card from each color, and you put them face down on the tracks. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Once it's on the tracks and it's face down, you can't look at that pile again, so you're going off of memory. Now, after they've put all their cards on the track, they can do one of 3 things. They can either draw more cards, and the way that works is you can either take 2 cards from the top of this on the top of this pile, or 2 cards from the ones that are face up, unless it's a locomotive. Now, a locomotive is a wild card, and you can only take 1 of those if you know that you're picking it up. If you happen to get a locomotive face down without knowing it, then you can still draw 2 cards. The other action option is to play cards from your hand into your rail yard. So the way that works is if I want to play green cards, so long as I have more than 1 green card and a locomotive counts, I can put a stack there. I can put 5 green cards if I want to. If I only have 1 type of a color, then I have to put actually out 3 cards of different colors, 1 of each. So basically, let's say I had a red, black, and a green card, then I could lay them out as well. The last thing that you can do is you can try to take more tickets, but you have to be careful when you do that, because if you can't finish the tickets by the end of the game, you're actually going to lose the amount of points on there. Once the end of the game comes, players go through the tickets that they have, and they go through the cards that they have on the tracks and try to match them up to see if they can finish them. So for instance, I have a yellow card, a white card, a purple card, and an orange card. So that one is considered completed. For the Seattle to Toronto route, it takes 2 purple cards, a blue card, and a black card, and I only have yellow, blue, and wild, so I can't complete that one. In this case, I would gain 16 points for finishing this one. I would lose 17 points for not finishing this one. At the end of the game as well, you take a look at certain major cities, and whoever has the most completed routes through that city will get this bonus card with points. So for instance, whoever has got Chicago the most in their completed routes is going to get 12 points. If there's a tie, they share the points. Whoever has the most points at the end of this game wins. Now, the mechanics in Ticket to Ride, the card game, are hand management, memory, and set collection. The 3 things I enjoy most about Ticket to Ride, the card game, the first is that it sets up in maybe 2 minutes, if that. You take the cards out of the box, you shuffle them, you put them on the table, and you're ready to play. It's really, really quick. The second thing I enjoy is that it's a great filler game. It's a wonderful game to start or end your games night or games day with, simply because of the easy setup, the easy abstract play, and the short play length. You can get through it pretty quick, so it makes it for a great filler game. The last thing that I like about it is the memory component. When you move stuff from your rail yard to on the tracks, it's really tough to remember what you've put in there. And at the end of the game, when you flip those cards over and you see what's in there or in that pile, it's really fun to see if you actually had what you needed to finish everything you hoped for. And it makes for a really, really unique challenge, unlike a lot of games that I've played. Now our last game is a pretty popular railroad game, and it has a big box, and it's called Railways of the World. Now Railways of the World has been out since 2005. It's a 2 to 6 player game of medium complexity. The box says it takes 120 minutes. With a 3-player count, we found it takes about 125 minutes. And if you have a new player at the table, I'd recommend adding 15 to 20 minutes to your budgeted play time for this game. Railways of the World is a game where each player is a railroad baron looking to score the most victory points in order to win the game. Now, the beginning of each round starts with an auction where each player can bid to see who goes first. Once that's determined, each player actually gets 3 action turns to do one of 5 things. Now, the 5 things that they can do first is they can choose to lay track. So you have these little railroad tracks here. You can connect one city to another. And there's a cost associated with depending on where you put the track and how many you put down. But once you put the track down, and you can put down up to 4, unless you connect 2 cities and you have to stop immediately, you put a locomotive on of your color on that track to indicate that you actually own that track and nobody else can take that track, or that you claim ownership over it. The other thing you can do is you can actually urbanize. So you can pay $10,000 to build a new city on any space that's gray. So let's say on Barrancos here, I want to make it a new city. I'm going to put that there, pay $10,000, and we move on. The next thing you can do is you can ship goods from one city to another. So each city has a color on it, unless it's gray, because it hasn't been urbanized yet. And that color indicates which type of good that it has demands for. So this city here is called Beja, and they are demanding purple goods. Now, each of these cubes represents a good. So this is a purple good here. So if I wanted to, on my turn, I could ship it from here to Bejas, going through this completed line and that completed line. So in order to ship it, it has to travel over completed rail lines. Now, this line is owned by purple. So the purple player is going to get a point for their line being used. And this one is owned by green. So the green player is also going to get a point because their line was used. The fourth thing that players can do is they can upgrade their steam engine. So everybody starts with a level 1 steam engine. And what that means is when you choose to ship goods from one city to another, you can actually only have it go from one city to another. So in the example I just showed you, it went through 2 cities to make it to Bejas. In order to be able to do that, I would need to upgrade my steam engine to level 2, meaning that I can now go through 2 cities. The last thing that you can do in your turn is you can take a railroad operations card, and those operations cards are going to help you do things more quickly or get you points or get you income. They just give you different advantages in different kinds of ways. Now, every time a city has been emptied of the goods in it, it becomes an empty city. And the game ends when there is a preset number of cities that have become empty. So for instance, in a 2-player game, once there are 9 empty cities, the game is over. Whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. The other thing you need to look out for is that you actually need to take bonds and loans at the beginning of the game to get started. And then throughout each round, you're actually going to have to pay dividends on those bonds after you gather income. So it becomes a little bit of a balancing act with your finances as well. Now, the mechanics in Railways of the World, and there are many, but the most 5 prevalent are action points, income, tile placement, network and route building, and auction and bidding. You know, if I had to pick the 3 things that I enjoy most about Railways of the World, the first would be this: the variability in the setup. Simply by picking the goods at random from a bag and putting them on the cities makes for a different game every time, meaning that you have to build your railways different every time, and the strategies that you have in delivering those goods are going to be different every time. So it makes it for a new experience and a new strategy almost every game. The other thing that I really like is that you have to start really with not a lot of money. You have no choice but to take out bonds and loans to get yourself started. And it's interesting to watch how each player plans for the long term when that's how they need to start. And it makes it for an interesting challenge at the beginning to see how quickly you can start turning enough income so you don't have to rely on bonds anymore. The last thing that I like about this game is all the maps. You have railways of Mexico. You saw railways of Portugal. There's railways of North America, railways of Great Britain. Like I could go on and on and on. There's just so many maps for this game, and each map has its own set of unique kind of rules and circumstances that are all related to the real life situations in those areas. And that makes it a game that has a high replayability factor, because you can just keep adding new maps and trying it in a different way, and it makes it something that's worth getting because you can play it in so many different ways, so many different times. Well, that does it for another week here. I hope you enjoyed hearing about just 3 of the mini railroad games that are out there, as much as I've enjoyed sharing them with you this week. If you like these videos and you want to see more of them, you can always go ahead and hit subscribe below the video window there, and hit that little bell while you're at it. You'll get notifications every time we have a new video or a new episode up. Or even better, why don't you comment below and tell us if you've tried these games or what's on your table this weekend.